Hello, folks. This is Mike Jenkins on the midweek Mike Jenkins review show. I figured the midweek video that I would do, I plan on doing 2 videos a week. The video that I do on the weekend is doing the She-Ra Princess of Power reviews, and then I wanted to do a midweek video that's generally about trending topics that are going on in the fandom right now and just in entertainment news in general. So I'll do 3 topics on the midweek show. And the 3 topics I'm going to do today are going to focus on number 1. The first topic will be about She-Ra returning to the airwaves in 2018. That's a big piece of news for fans. We've been waiting for years for She-Ra to return in some fashion, and she has in a way returned in comic books as well as in toy lines, but not in a wide release format such as the show that she's getting on Netflix in 2018. So that's the first story. The second story we're going to focus on will be Star Wars. I just want to do a real quick vent and discuss the release of The Last Jedi. It came out last weekend and is going pretty strong, and I'm just going to make a couple of comments about what's going on with that. And then the third story, it's a relatively older story, or it's getting somewhat stale, but I wanted to make a couple of comments about the Disney-Fox merger that's happening and how that's going to affect things. Now, of course, there's all sorts of entertainment outlets and news outlets that are discussing these topics, have already discussed these topics, but there's things that I'm seeing in the fan groups that I am a part of, particularly on Facebook, and I just wanted to throw some comments out there and potentially provide another outlet for people to do some discussion, because some of those discussions get a little passionate, a little heated, and I try to play mediator in a lot of cases. So here we go. Topic number 1. She-Ra has been off the airwaves since 1986. Her original television series ran for 1.5 seasons. It aired in 1985, and the first season ran for about 65 episodes, and the second season was canceled early on and ran for half of that. And that had to do with the performance of the toy line. The toy line declined in sales in the second wave, and so though Mattel had plans and Filmation, both Mattel and Filmation had plans for the third wave, the sales numbers proved that She-Ra's time had to be cut short. Mattel in general in that time period was struggling financially and had to look for several product lines that would have to meet their demise. He-Man as well met his demise in 1987, although he did get a couple of figures released in Europe in 1988. Both He-Man and She-Ra lost their toy lines in 1987. She-Ra would go on to become a cultural icon, but she was not featured in He-Man's reboot in 1989, which the fandom dubs The New Adventures. The toy line itself was called He-Man, but the cartoon series was called New Adventures and took on a more science fiction format, and She-Ra was nowhere to be found. And even though she was planned to be in the live-action film starring Dolph Lundgren and Frank Langella, she did not appear there as well. Budget and time meant that she had to be cut, despite the fact that she was designed. New Adventures was a relaunch or reboot or indirect sequel to the original Masters of the Universe, but it didn't live up to what its predecessor was able to accomplish. Although, in comparison to many other toy lines, New Adventures didn't do that bad. It just didn't make the same type of splash that Masters of the Universe did. And so around 1992, New Adventures would go away. And so 10 years would pass. And in 2002, we would get the 2000X show, the reboot by Mike Young Productions that aired on Cartoon Network and featured most of the lineup, a good chunk of the lineup of the Masters of the Universe toy line, in a new, rebooted, refreshened fashion. The 2000X Masters of the Universe did pretty well, but it too only made it for, I think it was 3 seasons. The 3rd season itself was cut a bit short. And not too long after the 2000X series died off, that would be the cartoon series as well as the toy line, Mattel found another outlet for Masters of the Universe in the form of Masters of the Universe Classics. That was a toy line that launched late in 2008, and it was an online exclusive series, or exclusive adult toy line, and it took all the characters, or most of the characters from the original Masters of the Universe toy line, most of the characters from Princess of Power, and many of the characters from New Adventures, and merged them into one massive toy line for adults. That toy line started in 2008, and it is 2017, and it is still running. I think Masters of the Universe Classics is one of the most successful adult toy lines, or toy lines in general. It's one of the most prolific and diverse toy lines that I've had the pleasure of collecting. And it's helped to put Masters of the Universe on the map. So from Masters of the Universe Classics, we've been able to see all sorts of merchandise spin out of it, and publications. So we got to see comic books come out of Masters of the Universe Classics, not only in the toy line itself in the form of new mini comics, but DC Comics released several series for Masters of the Universe. She-Ra was featured in one of the comic book series. And the thing about She-Ra and the limitation of her exposure, a lot of that has to do with how her rights have been split. Her rights are not as straightforward as He-Man's. He-Man is owned by Mattel. Mattel licensed out to Filmation to produce a cartoon series. But Mattel owned Masters of the Universe. When Mattel decided to do a spin-off of Masters of the Universe in the form of Princess of Power, they went to Filmation, and essentially Filmation and Mattel shared the creation of Princess of Power. So the creation rights of She-Ra and the Princess of Power brand are split between Mattel and Filmation. Filmation over the years has been bought out by other outlets. I believe at one point it was owned by Westinghouse, and then it is currently owned by Universal Studios DreamWorks. And so it's been tricky over the years to line up the moons, if you will, to get Princess of Power to a point where, okay, let's do a comic book series. Okay, let's do a cartoon series. It's not as straightforward as saying, hey, we want She-Ra to be in the Masters of the Universe cartoon series. Let's do it. You have to get a legal sign-off from the owners of the Filmation library in order to do that. So that's been some of the difficulty in getting She-Ra in multimedia entertainment outlets over the years. And now that DreamWorks and Universal have taken control of the property, and they've seen the value of the property and the potential of the property, they've gone ahead and they've put this new cartoon series into development. The cartoon series is going to debut on Netflix sometime in 2018. As of yet, there is no release date. But if it's going to be anything like a cartoon series like Voltron, which is another Netflix exclusive, and it is also a reboot of a very popular 80s brand, I think She-Ra is in the right place. You have brands like DC Superhero Girls and to a lesser degree now Monster High, and these types of girls brands are edgy, and they're not your fluffy Barbie girly type brands. They trend more towards a tomboyish, trendy, darker brand for girls. Still popular, but it's not that girly, fluffy Barbie aesthetic. Monster High did very well for several years, but the recent attempt to reboot it and refresh it actually drove away fans and collectors who were really big into the brand. And so Monster High has been on the decline in the past couple of years. And in its place, DC Superhero Girls has been on the rise. But after seeing the accomplishment of Monster High and the current accomplishments of DC Superhero Girls, it made sense for DreamWorks and Mattel to put a brand like She-Ra into production. So this new cartoon series that we're getting promises to be more hip, edgy, adventure toned. It's not going to be fluffy, and it's potentially going to have a similar tone and aesthetic to shows like DC Superhero Girls and brands like Monster High. Some fans have been discussing this, and images have been released. I'm not 100% confident that these are actual images from the cartoon series that's being produced. They potentially are. The sources that have released these images are reliable, but I tend to not lock in on those sorts of things until there's been an official announcement from the official outlets. So there's some fans who are looking at this art and they are not happy with the art. There is a possibility that it is the art, but I'm cautioning everyone to just wait and see what actually comes down the pipeline in 2018. A big topic is He-Man going to be in the show? And because He-Man is not in the spotlight right now as far as having a cartoon series, there is the chance that he may show up later, but he is not the focus of the show. And so the question is, how is the show going to begin? Is there going to be an origin? And my theory on that is, my prediction is, the show will debut without an origin for She-Ra. So many shows, so many cartoon series skip any need for an origin and just drop you right into the action. So it's very likely that that's something we're going to get with She-Ra, and that will do away with the conundrum of figuring out how we're going to do her origin without having He-Man be a big part of it. So my theory, my suspicion is they're going to drop you right into the action based on some very vague comments that have been put out. I do believe that Hordak will be a villain. Because comments have been made that they are going to take the original show and make it more hip, make it current. So to me, that indicates that it's probably going to be Hordak as the main villain and She-Ra as the leader of the rebellion. There is question of a voice actress being too young for She-Ra, and it's very possible that if she is playing She-Ra, I mean, she could be playing Glimmer, she could be playing any number of characters, whether they're based on original characters from the brand, or brand new characters that are created particularly for this show. If this young actress is portraying She-Ra, it's likely that they're going to take a 2000X route and have her play the young Adora, who then changes into She-Ra, who's more grown up. You know, Adam is 15 years old in the 2000X show, but when he becomes He-Man, He-Man is somewhere in his late 20s, early 30s. So that could be something that happens with the She-Ra character in this new show. He-Man could come into the series later in the show, or perhaps in season 2 if the show does well, and if it even does well enough, perhaps he gets the spin-off in season 3 or something like that. But he's not going to be the focus. I don't think he's been totally ruled out, so we'll just have to wait and see. I'm very excited for this show, and I think that there is a great chance that it's going to do well, and I strongly suspect we will also get a toy line out of it. I don't see them doing this type of cartoon series and not do a corresponding toy line. And with that, Super 7, who is currently doing the Masters of the Universe Classics toy line, was actually working on new She-Ra, vintage style She-Ra figures themselves. Those figures were slated originally to be released in December, but for some unreleased reason, those figures were put on hold because of something happening in 2018. And my strong suspicion is that Super 7 is going to coordinate with Mattel and with the release of this new show, and release its vintage She-Ra and Hordak figures alongside the new She-Ra toy line that's going to be released for this new cartoon series. So it'll be a multi-line release. It will attract adult collectors who are more likely to buy into the Super 7 figures that are styled after the Masters of the Universe vintage toy line. But we're going to get a She-Ra figure as if she was released in Masters of the Universe, along with a Hordak that's more based on his female or his Filmation blue design. So you'll have toys for the adult collectors in that sense, and then you'll also have the main retail line that is geared towards young girls, similar to DC superheroes. So I think it's going to be an exciting time for the Princess of Power brand in 2018. We're going to be getting 2 toy lines, most likely, as well as this new cartoon series, and I'm sure there will be a slew of merchandise that will help to promote the brand as a whole. So that's story number 1, and that ran kind of long. Story number 2, I'll keep it brief because it's an unfolding development. Story number 2 is Star Wars: The Last Jedi. I went to see that movie on Sunday, and I'll keep it spoiler free, but fans have become divided by this film. And it's been a couple of days, but I still find myself to be on the fence about it. I can say that the reaction that I have to The Last Jedi is not the same reaction I had to the prequel films. I remember going to Orlando on International Drive and waiting in line for 12 hours with my college roommates and buddies, and it was a great time. It's a time that I look back on, and I have great fond memories of it. But I just remember waiting in line for 12 hours and finally getting into the movie and being so excited and watching the film, and then coming out and just being speechless. Phantom Menace was a disappointment. It was a huge disappointment. You know, after waiting 15, 20 something years at that point, I was speechless, and a lot of us were. We just didn't know how to feel about that film, and the prequel trilogy went on, and it was just after the failure of episode 1, 2 and 3 just could not pick up and go in the right direction. So the whole trilogy just it wasn't something that could live up to the first original trilogy. Force Awakens was a different experience, and I think a lot of people walked away from Force Awakens feeling generally relieved to have this refreshed approach to the film series, to the franchise. Force Awakens is a bit of a rehash of A New Hope. It kind of almost beat for beat is almost like a remake of A New Hope, and it just comes off as J.J. Abrams playing it very safe after having the prequels and having to come back to produce this new film in making sure that audiences responded well to it. Audiences did indeed respond well, and the film is just well regarded, and the new characters have been embraced. So a lot of theorizing has happened over the past couple of years as to who Rey's parents are, who Snoke is, and does The Last Jedi satisfy that? I will leave that to everyone who has seen the film or is going to see the film. But I can say I walked away from the movie and I'm on the fence. I can definitely say it was a better experience than the prequels, but there are moments where the wind was taken out of me. And so you'll find that right now there's a petition out to strike The Last Jedi from continuity. Last I checked, the petition was up to 3,771 signees or signers, and it's got to get up to 5,000, and I don't know what they're going to do past that, but we'll see where that petition goes. Who knows? And even in the Facebook Star Wars group that I'm in, fans are divided. They are clearly divided, and there's fake fans and real fans, and there's all sorts of finger pointing and all of this, and there is the potential for the film to get a larger drop off than expected in its second weekend. There's no doubt that Star Wars The Last Jedi is going to make huge bank in its box office days, but I think negative press could potentially affect how much it can actually make. So my question to you is, have you seen the movie? And if you have, what do you think about it? And what do you think about what needs to happen in Episode 9? I personally think Episode 9 has a lot to make up for from Episode 8. So we'll see. And that's story number 2. Story number 3 is just talking about the merger between Fox and Disney. This is a historic event, and it's not 100% in the bag. It has to be approved because there is the potential that it can be viewed as a monopoly, and there is some fear that Disney is just gaining too much power in doing this. And a lot of theories are flying around as to the reasons why this is happening. And one of those is Disney wanting to position itself to take out Netflix as a threat. Netflix is becoming quite the power to reckon with, and it is almost flawless in how it is running its streaming model and producing all of this original content that is very desirable to watch. And so other entertainment outlets are trying to mirror that success to varying degrees of success and failure. And Disney is looking at that model and trying to figure out how they are going to get in on that, instead of paying Netflix to stream all of their properties. So, but what it means for many of us fans is now we can have Deadpool under the Disney banner, and the X-Men. So there's the chance that we'll see X-Men and we'll see mutants in the Avengers and Avengers spin-off films. And now Disney has most of the Marvel characters under its control once again. The only outlier now is Spider-Man, who is owned by Sony. At least the licensing, the entertainment film licensing is under the control of Sony currently. And as long as Sony continues making films, they get to retain those rights. So, but at the current moment, Sony is sharing production control with Disney. So Sony is the primary owner of the movie licensing rights, but they work with Disney to produce Spider-Man films. So we'll see how long Sony can last, and what kind of tricks Sony would try to pull as far as trying to get from under that contract that they have with Disney. But it'll be a year. It'll take about a year for everything to finalize between Disney and Fox. So there is the chance that it for some reason could fall through. I don't think it will, but there is that potential there. And there's just this big question of, well, how are they going to do rated R movies? Disney doesn't do rated R movies. Well, Disney owned rated R arms. So Miramax, for example, and Dimension did rated R films, and they were owned by Disney. So it's not impossible or out of the question for rated R movies to be done under Disney's control. Most likely what will happen is 20th Century Fox will either be rebranded or renamed, and it will be the house where rated R films are produced and launched, while the Disney proper brand stays as is. And it will just be a matter of creating or writing stories where rated R characters like Deadpool could end up showing up in an Avengers type movie. He'll be watered down. He won't be doing his raunchy stuff, but he could show up in an Avengers film and maybe tell a couple of like slightly raunchy jokes, and then slip out and go make his rated R movies under the Fox banner. So it'll be great to see that happen. It'll be awesome to see Marvel come together and do crossover stories and whatnot. I think Disney Marvel would do a better job of doing Fantastic Four justice. I just don't think Fox knew what to do with the property. And it's just up in the air. We'll see. There's some scary things about monopolies. But a lot of us as fans have been waiting for the chance to see Marvel bring itself back together and see what type of entertainment we can do with that. So time will tell the tale. And so those are the three stories that I had. That was a little over 30 minutes of a rant there. But let me know your thoughts on these three topics. How are you feeling about She-Ra coming back in 2018 and us seeing the possibilities of a new toy line and new merchandise? What are you thinking about Star Wars The Last Jedi? Are you going to go see it? Have you seen it? What do you think about Last Jedi? What do you think about Episode 9 in the future of Star Wars in general? The merger between 20th Century Fox and Disney. What does that mean for Marvel and other movie franchises like Alien and Predator? So write your comments down below. Let me know your thoughts. And if you want to see topics discussed in the future, or what do you want to see discussed next week, write those thoughts in the comments, and I'll put together 3 topics for next week. And until then, have a good week.